What's up, guys? Welcome into All Tied Up. We are recording this Friday, January 17th. I am your co-host, Chris Marler, joined by my good buddy, Clint Lamb, who I think he's my good buddy. I don't know. He's been talking a lot of shit off air before we hit record. But so I'm in quite a conundrum today. But we've got a good show for you, talking about some of the Clint's drinking at 10:30 in the morning. Love that red Solo cup. We've got some.
Mio.
Is it Mio?
Yeah, fruit punch Mio. It's that
Is
good,
that
good.
still a thing?
It is still a thing. It's actually a great mixer with alcohol, speaking candidly, because you just mix it with water. Essentially, you stay hydrated, you get a good mixer. Anyways, we're not going to, that's not what this conversation's
No, that's
about.
exactly where I was going to go with it. So I'm glad you did instead of me. I don't remember how many times I saw people be like, I'll just put Mio in my vodka. And it was like, hey, you're going to die from alcohol poisoning. You can't do that.
Well, you got to mix the Mio with the water and then mix that.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
well, you tried telling that to a couple of AD
actually
pies
learned that
college.
tip from I learned that tip from a former Alabama football player. He was like, that's exactly what we do to be able to drink and enjoy ourselves, but also you're not putting a ton of, if you're like a kind of more of a hard liquor kind of person,
Yeah.
You're not mixing it with a bunch of not good drinks. So anyways, that is not what we were here to talk about.
No, that's going to be for our spring break episode. We just wanted to give it a quick little shout out. We'll be here. We'll be live from Destin for the entire week of spring break. So you guys can give us a shout. Okay, so today the season's over. Obviously, the transfer portal, I believe, is actually closed.
Why do you always say you believe it's actually?
Because I don't know, Clint. I don't know what's going on.
It is not closed for Notre Dame. It is not closed for Ohio State. For everybody
the SEC,
else,
it's closed.
For everybody else, it's closed. It's 5 days after your bowl game. So those two teams haven't played their final game. So it's still open. And I think someone yesterday actually, I don't even know who the player was, but he went ahead and it's like he probably started realizing what a lot of others are realizing. Like other players were able to jump into the portal well over a month ago and go ahead and kind of get ahead. Other teams have been able to evaluate, get them on campus, do all that. Some of these players that are running to close to late January are starting to realize a lot of these spots are drying up. And so someone said that they were going to be staying with Ohio State through the national championship game, but they wanted to go ahead and put their name in the transfer portal. And I think that's just to let everybody know, hey, if you got spots, don't fill them up if you're interested in me. And I think you'll start seeing more of that later on because that is a huge disadvantage. And I wonder if that will eventually lead to, not players sitting out of like a national title game, but if you make it past a certain round, like you go ahead and make your intentions known, and then you say you're going to stick around with your team. I don't know. It's going to change the dynamic, I'm sure, because a lot of these probably players at this point are not freaking out, but I mean, these spots are only available for so long.
It's so weird, Clint, because there's so many things that coaches have to account for now. And I'm not saying be held accountable for, but like they just have to account for now. Like there's just, I remember saying this 2 years ago, and I was like, man, the worst part about this whole situation with the way that like the calendar is set up now with like early signing period and the portal also, so it's like no one's ever gonna feel bad for rich people in general. They just don't. Like you just like it's like for whatever reason, if you make a lot of money, people just they don't have as much empathy for your issues, right? And we see that all the time, like around the country, whatever. But I remember saying this. I was like, people aren't going to feel bad for Saban. Anytime he spoke out about it, you saw it. It was like, oh, he just doesn't want to pay players. He just doesn't want this. And it's like, how do these people have time to spend with their families? Like you saw Tom Allen speak about it when he went to Clemson. But that is one of the craziest parts of this whole calendar now, and they have to figure out a way to get it, at least a little bit more, I don't know, in line so people can just go home for dinner. It's like it's just crazy. And so anyway, it's a wild time in terms of the December portal window opening December 9th. It's now finally closed to all SEC teams. And I think, like you said, like it's like that's just such an odd thing to have happen because it's like, hey, you want these kids to go do what's best for them, but like it's a weird feeling to have to say I'm going to play through in practice, but when the national championship's over, I'm going to go because I want a better opportunity. Because for the longest time, that person would be viewed as a bad teammate, selfish, or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, it's just a lot of stuff.
Well, I mean, it kind of forces you to be more about you. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't afford, like, I mean, it's only what, 3 or 4 days away from the national title game. And then after that, you'll have a 5-day window. But like I said, I mean, the 20th, you're pushing it into the latter parts of January. Plus, you have a 5-day window. If you press that towards the end, if you need some time to think about it, once you step back and kind of collect yourself after the title game, then you're kind of, I mean, just what opportunities are available to you. And I'm sure if you're a good enough player, there will still be plenty. But I'm saying, like, I mean, think about it. Think if you're a big body receiver, maybe you would have wanted to have gone to play at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, they already went out there and filled that need in Isaiah Horton. You know, they did that a while ago. This has been a thing. Someone else needs a corner and you fit that description, but they went ahead and went and got somebody. It's like, we really couldn't afford to, because plus it's like playing time. Like you're making these pitches and it's like, hey, we want you, we'll have this, X opportunity for you. We have this opportunity, like, for playing time or whatever, but then another player that fits that description that would also be a part of that. If you bring them in too, now you didn't really promise the first guy what you said, or you didn't deliver because you brought somebody else in. It's just, it's a really wacky situation. But I mean, I don't know how much due to classes, and I mean, like, what do you do?
Least talked about part. Like,
I mean, you got to be able to get into the school. I mean, so yeah, I mean, that's a lot of these kids that are going to be entering after the national championship game. It's like, what schools have spots open? Are you gonna have to wait until the summer to enroll? Like, now you put yourself on the 8 ball. Like, this is I don't know what the solution is, but the timeline is very screwed up. But
no, I think they're gonna figure it out though. I think one of the positives from all of this is, that's a long gulp. Is that I think that I think one of the positives of all this is it does kind of feel like finally, because all this stuff was just kind of like thrown at us and it was like, all right, go figure it out. Like, because the NCAA realized, like, we're not gonna be able to profit off this, like overwhelmingly take advantage and profit off of this anymore. So you guys just go do whatever. And it does feel like they're trying to figure out some stuff now. I don't really want to get into the Title IX stuff. I just kind of want to bounce around some stuff because so right before we hit record on this, about an hour beforehand, Amari Niblack enters the portal, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. And it's kind of twofold. You brought up the counterpoint, which is, my thought was, what are your thoughts on bringing a guy like that back? I know that Amari Niblack drove a lot of Bama fans up a wall. I thought he was awesome. I thought he was like a physical mismatch in terms of, this team this year would have been better with Amari Niblack on it, in my opinion, on the field. Like, you can hate what he did after the Texas game when he's dancing on TikTok and all that kind of stuff. You can definitely hate him leaving in the portal when things got tough, just to go to Texas and then record 5 catches for 33 yards on the whole season. I'll tell you what's worse than that, Clint, is it's not that he only got 5 catches for 33 yards. It's that he played 9 games and wasted a year to redshirt.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the big problem. His big issue, at least at Texas, in my opinion, from what I've heard, is the lack of blocking. And they really want their tight ends to kind of be more of, they got receivers for days. And when you think about like Steve Sarkisian and kind of what he's had, I'm not saying that obviously, A.D. Mitchell was a guy who he had a success kind of being a bigger body guy, but just the receiving options that he kind of had it set up. It wasn't the right outs, but it was kind of the smaller
speed.
Speed can kind of create separation through their route running and be able to, beat you downfield vertically with speed and doing all those things. It's kind of like the offense was set up that way. They weren't really looking for like a big body pass catcher, I don't think. And so, they really needed him as a tight end, if anything. And he wasn't really going to provide a complete skill set. I don't know how much he developed on that front. I'm sure him spending an entire year working on it certainly helped to some extent, you would think. But I don't know what Alabama's looking for either. Like, Josh Cuevas is kind of going to be that guy, that move tight end that you look for and you want in a Kalen DeBoer offense. Danny Lewis is more than likely going to be like your inline blocker who's, does more than just blocking. I think the tight end position is going to look vastly different moving forward than it did in 2024, where it was like, outside of some very timely play designs, the tight ends weren't really super involved in the passing game, but they were a massive part, a really important part of the offense because of their blocking ability. You need to be able to block, but I think it's going to be a little bit more balanced. And I don't know how he fits into that. Granted, I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen.
Would you welcome somebody like that back, though?
I don't think that I would. I just don't think he left under the best terms, and maybe I'm wrong on that, and I kind of don't want to speculate too much, but it seemed like, it seemed like he was kind of disgruntled last year, during the season, and because of some of the stuff that he was doing, but also, didn't obviously rub some fans the wrong way with the TikTok dances and all that stuff after losses, or being on Instagram Live, I think was his thing. But just, he's a talented guy. I'm sure he'll end up somewhere. I'm sure he'll still end up in a pretty good spot. I don't think he's going to have to step down, go to some lowly rated, group of 5 school. But at Alabama, I'm not going to put it, I'm not going to say that it can't happen, but I think Cuevas is a little bit more balanced. He brings the pass catching element. He's not even close to being the mismatch problem that Amari Niblack is. Period. But
what about replacing a guy like Caleb Odom? I know, I feel like Odom is a little bit more of a natural fit at receiver than he is tight end. But I know out of high school originally he was considered a tight end prospect, but then it was all right, listen, he's 6'5", was 220, and can run. So and I guess this is all speculation. It's probably not that important to even get into. My main thought is that I would welcome him back just because I think he would be a valuable asset to add on the field. Especially, dude, listen, 2023, he was the third best pass catcher on the team, right? He had the third most receptions. He was tied for second most receiving touchdowns, third most receiving yards. If he's grown up, I say you could entertain it. That's the thing. And because I do think that, in my opinion, when I look at it, I always try to think, listen, how was I at 20 to 21, 21 to 22 in terms of maturity and understanding all that kind of stuff? And
I'm sure you were real immature.
That was the worst. I thank God I thank God every day that we didn't have Facebook statuses when I was in high school, because the amount of Taking Back Sunday lyrics that I would have been posting, just emoed out, would have been, oh my God.
We did when I was in high school, and it's not those 10-year memories popping up, 15-year memories popping up. It's not great, Chris. No. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, brother.
Not at all.
I was in some dark places for absolutely no reason. No reason to be as upset as I was.
Yeah, that's fair.
Girl broke my heart, thought the world was coming to an end.
Or to pay yet. So
no.
Okay, so I guess the other part of this too is something you brought up, which is I'm gonna continue doing this. I'll do it next week for over at losingthesports.net and write this article. But one of the things that I have been doing is keeping track of, okay, here's the total amount of players lost. I do it every Monday. Total amount of players lost in the portal this year. Total amount of players gained. The net positive. There's only 2 teams in the SEC that signed more players than they lost this cycle so far, and that's Ole Miss and Mizzou. And Mizzou signed 2 more than they lost, and then Ole Miss signed 4. The name of the game in the portal has not ever been, we need to replace an equal amount of what we're losing. And in Alabama, for the last 4 years total, you have lost 108 players, and you've only signed 31. I don't feel like that's a sky is falling situation, but a net negative of 77 total players over 4 years, off the top of my head, that's 19.3 players per cycle that you're losing. That is at least concerning to a bit. But you brought the fact too, it's there's not a ton, or really, I'm off the top of my head, any players that are leaving that are having this massive success elsewhere. Caleb Downs is.
Or that was expected. He was a unicorn as far as entering the portal.
Yeah.
You don't even have to come close to replacing everything you lose in the transfer portal for this and a half, right? Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Kick me out.
Yeah, I thought you were just hey, I need to take a sip of my alcoholic drink or whatever at 10:55 a.m. and you were trying. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna let you do it.
Yeah,
but how many true seniors did you have? I mean,
Yeah.
Malachi Moore, Tim Smith. I'm trying to think. There's more. CJ Dupree, Robbie Oots.
Don't look at me. I'm on this question because like
Q
it's so
Robinson was
hard to
another.
keep up with it now. It's so like
Yeah.
with the COVID year now with the JUCO rules they have, and then and now they're just flat out considering going 5-5 for 5 years of eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, and so you got what, 5 or 6 total seniors. You had, I don't I could probably go through and count. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. What, 3? Or is it just 2? I don't know. I'm not gonna like really study it, but it's 2 or 3 that entered the NFL draft early.
Yeah.
They didn't have to. That's like a total of like what? 8 to 10 players lost.
Right.
And you're bringing in a 25-man recruiting class typically. I mean, it can sometimes be more or less now. But so I mean, of course, that's like an offset of 15, 16 guys that are coming in more than you're losing. So you can afford to do that in the transfer portal. Like that's just from a number standpoint, that makes sense. But what you're doing there is you're replacing guys who have been in your system with freshmen. That's the biggest. So like you're getting younger each and every year, it feels like. So experience is like a premium when it comes to not only like the top of your depth chart, but the depth as well.
The depth, yeah.
And that's something that I think has really changed. I mean, I actually have gone back, and I've only done it with the offense yet. I've mostly done it with the defense, but it's not done. But over at covercrimson.com, I actually did the snap, like not only the snaps, but the number of games played, the number of starts for everybody on offense, and that includes for 2024 and for their career. And that has there's a column for returning guys. There's a column for, the additions out of the transfer portal. And then there's a column for the departures. And it's so fans can kind of go on there and see for each and every position how many snaps you're losing, career and, for 2024, mostly careers, which you're probably going to want to be looking at. But when I was looking at Alabama's offensive line, for example, they got multiple guys who have had at least 10 starts. Actually, they have, I want to say, 5 guys who have had at least 8 starts or more and have played more than 900 snaps in their career. That's a ton of experience.
Yeah.
And then they got some other guys, Wilkin Formby, he started a couple of games. He's played in, probably, 9 or 10 games. He's had a couple of starts. You've got, the transfer tackle from Ball State, who I still haven't figured out how to pronounce his name correctly, so I don't want to botch it, but this past year, he played in 4 games. He had a start. He played about 100 snaps, so he's got a career start. So you got a lot of experience there along your offensive line, even though there's some question marks, like who's going to start at right tackle, who's going to start at left guard, a lot of options. Maybe it's not one of those experienced guys. Like you got Geno Vandermark and you have Cam Dewberry, the transfer from Texas A&M. Both of those guys have at least 8 starts in their career, at least 900 snaps. And so they're going to be battling it out at left guard. But it's also possible that Michael Carroll wins it as a freshman, or maybe Olasolinen or somebody else. But my point is looking at that position group in particular, the experience factor, I don't think we're talking about the amount of experience that Alabama's going to have in that room on top of the amount of talent, because you've got the returning starters, the high impact returning starters like Parker Brailsford. Kaden Proctor still has his problems, but he's going to have another offseason to kind of lose weight and get in better shape and kind of fit more of the Kalen DeBoer offense. Plus, Jackson Lloyd, Michael Carroll, you've brought in some, and Michael DeBose, that's a guy, he might end up playing tackle, he might end up playing guard, but I like him a lot. They've managed their offensive line well, in my opinion, even though I think we could all agree another tackle would probably be beneficial. And I've talked about what my solutions for that would be, but my point is that nowadays, being able to get that amount of experience back, at the receivers, you lose Kendrick Law, you lose Kobe Prentice, Manuel Henderson kind of helped a little bit. They've been involved. Caleb Odom had got some experience, but replacing them with Isaiah Horton, who has, I want to say 800 or 900 snaps in his career. He started I think between 5 and 10 games. It's on top of what you're bringing back with Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams and their experience, you're getting Cole Adams back, you're getting Jalen Hale back. Both of those 2 guys have some experience.
Hale, man.
I'm telling you, man, I feel like that the experience factor that Alabama's going to have at a lot of these in a lot of these rooms is really going to be beneficial. And I think that that's something we're not talking about enough compared to other teams.
No, I think it's a really good point. I think now I will say this too. You're smarter than I am when it comes to most things.
Everything.
Probably all things. I don't know. But
everything.
I would say for football, well, you got a fucking lava lamp in the background, so I don't know if it's
like I said, everything.
That's the clip right there. That better be up on social later today. No, so here's the thing. I think that it's so important for offensive line, defensive line. I think it's most important for offensive line than any other position unit in the entire country or on the roster. I don't think it's as big a deal at receiver because as you saw this year with Ryan Williams, as you see other guys that have come out and have breakout seasons, it's good, it's beneficial for sure. I think Caleb Odom is a kid that if he could figure it out in year 2, he could be a guy that blows up. But that's more of a high ceiling potential type thing. And I like what we have at receiver. The offensive line part of it that you brought up is the most important part because I think I was talking about this in South Carolina. I was doing the Locked On show there in December, and people were talking about, oh yeah, they're going to replace whoever in the offensive line. The offensive line was bad. Well, the offensive line was bad for them, right? I think they gave up 89 sacks in 2 years. But that being said, from guard to guard, guard, center, guard, across the 3 positions, they lost 93.5% of their overall snaps from this past year. At that position, especially in the interior offensive line, that's a massive, massive deal. One of the things I love that Kalen DeBoer did this year, and I'll say, I'm not saying that Saban didn't do this, but I do think there was also a thing with Saban, which is if we put you in and you do something stupid, like the kid who tried to recover that punt at Tennessee in 2022, he didn't really see the field that much after that. I don't believe. Wilkin Formby, after having a very, very tough game against South Florida, is a guy that you saw in the rotation a bunch. Not James Vandermark. What's the kid? The guard, Vandermeer?
Gino Vandermark.
Gino Vandermark. He is a kid that he was in all the time. I noticed so often this year, I'd look up in the second or third quarter, they'd be coming out of the huddle or they'd be lining up. You're hold on, we have a different offensive line starting 5 in there. And then the other part too is so you have a ton of experience that they've tried to, I wouldn't say an extended tryout, but they were getting players reps over and over and over again, which keeps people fresh, keeps people healthy, all the above. The thing with Kaden Proctor, and Cole Kubelik brought this up last year, and I thought it was a really good point. Kaden Proctor has more upside probably than anybody on the team. At a position of need, that is a position you will see drafted in the top 5 in the NFL draft almost every year, right? He is a really, really good offensive tackle and offensive tackle prospect. He struggled as a freshman, right? He also, this year, I think he gave up 13 hurries, something like that, which was he didn't.
It was 35 as a freshman, and the improvement was
right.
Insane. I mean,
right.
I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, he didn't get any better." Go look at the numbers. He got a lot better.
Agreed. But here's the thing too. Cole Kubelik brought this up too, which was when he left Bama to go to Iowa, and he was at Iowa for a spring semester. We all made our jokes about, or at least I did, about oh well, they let Iowa go give him a bunch of money for NIL, and then he left and came back. The thing that he missed out on wasn't the camaraderie or anything with the new coaching, learning about his new position coach and head coach and the new offense and the playbook or anything like that. It was for that semester, he didn't have to go through 15 practices for spring practice. He did not have to go through conditioning at Alabama or anything like that. So he was a little bit behind when it comes to getting in and being prepared for the season. And now we get to see him in a situation where he will have a full year for the first time of college football, in-season, off-season workouts, all the above. He's in year 3. This is the first time he will be going through that. I think it's going to be tremendous for him.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say when William Ming and I both graduated, well, we were going to be graduating. It was the second semester of our senior year. Ming was committed to Alabama. I was committed to not go to Alabama, Birmingham Southern. But I thought it was crazy. His dad paid for him to go to a guy, and he would go and condition with him. And it was more than just conditioning, but he was getting ready for those 110s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the big thing. It was still in the early Saban years. that thing will destroy you. I'll tell you, DJ Fluker showed up for that same thing. He had a shoulder injury. He didn't think he was going to have to run. Cochran told him at the last second, Fluker, you're running. He was overweight. Let's just say he struggled. But it was, Ming, like that was, I didn't do that. I was like, I think I can go run on my own. I didn't have the discipline to do it, not to the extent that I needed to. When Ming showed up and that summer, which I also did this, I did not show up in the summer. We showed up for fall camp, but he showed up ready to go. And I mean, he didn't really end up playing a whole lot at Alabama throughout his career, but when he showed up for those 110s, man, he was ready to rock and roll. He absolutely destroyed it compared to all the other freshmen.
Yeah.
I showed up and we got, conditioning test, and I mean, I made it, but I almost died. And so even though you think you have the discipline to do stuff on your own and you're going to be great about it, Kaden Proctor being on his own for that period of time, being a guy who kind of struggles, with his weight and has to kind of maintain it and stuff, he was just never him being there for the spring would have helped him tremendously. He would have got a little bit of time off and then you show back up for summer conditioning and all that stuff. That would have helped him so much last year. And so even though I think he ended up in a really good spot, the coaching staff, even though from a size standpoint, they still wanted him to be, continue to lose a little bit more weight. They thought he did a good job of getting in shape. That didn't seem to be an issue for him like it did or it was as a freshman. Yeah. So that's a benefit, but just him being able to maintain and continue to move in the right direction, get stronger, leaner, better, get in better shape, have a spring and all that. I agree with you. I think that's going to really help him. And I think it's going to help the team in general. Like I said, I know that there were times, you watch that Michigan game and both tackles just get absolutely destroyed right in Jalen's lap. And you say, I mean, Kaden Proctor's no better than he was as a freshman. Really go watch him. He is light years better. I don't think people realize just how bad he was a couple of years ago. And he's made improvements. And as long as he continues to make those improvements, what's going to happen in year 3? So I feel good about their left tackle, and I feel good about Formby. I think the coaching staff likes him. I don't think they went chasing after Elijah Pritchett. I really don't. And they
also gave up like 31 pressures this year, which I believe was either 2 or 4 less than the other 4 starters combined.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
and off the field, that kid was. I don't care how this sounds, but like, there's some stuff that's off the field. You're like, all right, he's young, he's dumb, he did some stuff, but the stuff that he got in trouble for off the field was just not
pretty
great.
Wild. It was pretty wild. And I mean, let's see. I want to 2021. Yeah. So Pritchett this year, I'm pulling up the numbers now. Yeah, he gave up 31 pressures and 6 sacks. The year before, in 2023, Elijah Pritchett gave up 36 pressures and 12 sacks. That is really, really bad.
Keep in mind that offensive line gave up 49 sacks with Jalen Milroe as the quarterback. And people can blame that on Milroe all they want. But the 49 sacks last year in 2023, when it was him and Kaden Proctor as a freshman, because I think Proctor was responsible. He had some level of responsibility for like 32.3% of the pressures that year on PFF. That offensive line gave up more sacks than Georgia, Oregon, Washington, and Michigan combined.
Yep. And so with Pritchett this year, by far the highest, 31 pressures. The next highest was Kaden Proctor with only 13. Solid. You look at 2023, 36 pressures for Proctor. The next highest with Tyler Booker with 15.
Right.
So 21 pressure difference. You want to talk about bad offensive lines? 2021 with Chris Owens at right tackle. And I hate, they
weren't as bad as 2023 though.
I mean, they didn't give up as many sacks because of a man by the name of Bryce Young, and his escapability is what really saved them. Because listen to this, Chris Owens gave up 46 pressures, only 4 sacks though, but 40 hurries. Javian Cohen gave up 34 pressures. So we talk about like the 20 plus pressure difference between that 31 and that 36 for Pritchett and Proctor.
Right.
It dropped into like 15 and 13. Next highest was it was higher than Pritchett, and it was almost as high as Proctor, and that was Javian Cohen. And then there was another player, Emil Ekiyor Jr., who gave up 23. Now, granted, they all played 15 games. That is a difference. But there was a lot more, everybody talked about Javian Cohen not giving up a sack that year, and he was kind of praised for it. When you look at the pressure rate, he was a swinging gate, man. You just come on in. And Chris Owens was, he should have been an interior guy, in my opinion. I think he would have been better served as a center. Alabama needed him to play tackle. They didn't have many better options. But
Evan Neal just over there,
locking it down. Yeah,
watching him versus the rest of the offensive line, it was like, oh my god. But listen, here's the thing. I'll tell you what that 2021 defense or offensive line did, and I to this day I have no idea how they did it. But they gave up 7 sacks to Auburn, and a week later gave up 0 to one of the best defenses in the history of college football. Let's close with this. I want to tell you my favorite DJ Fluker story from a physicality standpoint. You started giving me PTSD when you're talking about off-season workouts because it was. I think when I went to MTSU out of high school to play baseball, and everything I did with baseball up until college was the worst way. I could not have done it more ass backwards. It was like didn't play travel ball. I just worked out in the off season. So I got to campus and they were like, "Did you play summer ball?" I'm like, "No." They're like, "You just skipped out on getting like a bunch of reps every single day." And I was like, "I worked out." And they're like, "That's not what this sport is based on." What? Like,
are you playing football here? Did we miss
you
that?
You don't
memo?
have to be in shape to play this sport. And so, and then
Babe Ruth, man. That's all you got to say, Babe Ruth.
Yeah. And then in college, I remember I got in like great shape and I got really fast and I was like in the best shape of my life. And I remember I was running.
You got kind of fast.
No, I ran a 6'6", 60, which was like the equivalent of like a 4'5". I don't know what happened. I mean, I do know what happened. The workout was almost insane. But like, I remember running a 5:15 mile and being like, that's easy. We had to send our times in over Christmas break to our coach. And I ran a 5:15 mile and a 12:08 2 mile. And at 190 pounds, that's pretty good. And I remember like I was like, I'm clearly
190 pounds.
At the time I was.
All right.
Not anymore. But I was
Hashtag
like,
can relate.
Yeah. I was like, I remember sitting in my stuff and I was like, I clearly am the fastest person on the team when it comes to this. And my asshole friend, Brian Shaughnessy, lied about what he ran. He's like, so we got back and he's like, congrats, Brian Shaughnessy. He ran a 5-minute mile. And I was like, excuse me, Brian? And he was like, what? Did you actually run it? I'm like, yeah. He goes, no one else on the team ran it. We just sent in our times. Anyway, most impressive thing I ever saw from DJ Fluker. I'm at the 2008 Iron Bowl. A friend of mine, Heather Newkirk, shout out to Heather Newkirk. She got me and my dad in as a recruit. And I got to go through the whole thing. We're on the field pregame, walk in front. Like, we're there with, like, I think Quentin Dial was in our group. And this dude that was with him looked just like Brody Crowell. So everywhere we went, people thought we were with Brody Crowell. It was hilarious. But I remember sitting there and I'm like looking at halftime, looking in the like the little food spread area in the end zone. And you got to keep in mind, this is 2008. So we're like beating the shit out of Auburn. It's also this rainy, gross day. And I look over and Trent Richardson, Drake Kirkpatrick, and DJ Fluker are all over near the food, getting stuff. And I walk over there to get some food and I look down. And DJ Fluker he's just holding a stack of cookies between these fingers, just pinky and thumb. And I'm like, that is a lot of cookies. And then I'm like, how many fucking cookies is that? And I'm like, so I get over near him and I'm like, trying not to be a creep, but I failed miserably. And I'm like, looking, I'm just counting. And I look up and he's like staring at me. And I'm like, you got 19 cookies in your hand. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, cool, good for you, man. And I just walked off. 19 cookies.
He's one of the really, and I mean, I would say Latham wasn't too far off, but the biggest human being I've ever seen in person, was DJ Fluker. I mean, I
thought that should have been a metric and a stat at the NFL Combine.
19 cookies.
Pinky to thumb, how many cookies can you fit in your hand? Because he had 19. It's one of the most impressive.
What kind of cookies are we talking about, though? Like what we talking about Oreos? Those are pretty.
No.
We're talking about double stuffed Oreos.
Little like Publix type sugar chocolate chip, like just like a standard cookie.
Yeah, just 19 of them, huh? And next time I'm in a position where I can see how many, I'm going to report back and let you know exactly how many sugar cookies I can fit between my fingers.
That's all today for all time.
Yeah, we're getting canceled. All right. I appreciate Chris for hopping on here with me. I appreciate everybody for listening in. We've kind of got off the rails like 3 times in this episode.
That's what we do best.
That's what we do best. You are correct. I'm sure there's somebody that's going to comment and be like, "Dadgummit, stick to sports, man."
No.
Tired of. Well, I mean, I normally do stick to sports, but sometimes I just I can't with Chris. It's impossible. You had me talking about Mio and alcoholic beverages 30 seconds into the show. No.
I felt like you were channeling.
No, you just had to call me out about it, and we talk about, I don't know. You calling me out about my gulps, like too many gulps for old Chris over here.
That was on me.
Yeah, that was
anyway.
That was
Monday we'll be live from the inauguration, and we'll be talking strictly politics.
Yeah, no, we're getting canceled even before that even happened. So we're out of here. We appreciate you. It's kind of Chris. We appreciate everybody else a lot more. If you haven't already, like this video, go subscribe to the YouTube channel and get on over to covercrimson.com. Check out that snap count, games played, games started kind of chart. I call it the experience chart that I did on the offense. We're going to be having one for the defense, and that's going to be very valuable. You can keep up with that, know exactly where Alabama stands as far as what they're losing from an experience factor and from an experience standpoint, and what they're getting to see kind of maybe where they need some help, or maybe where they have some excess where that, you can feel really good about the position group from that standpoint. Chris, appreciate you. Appreciate everybody else. We'll talk to you guys soon.